which is now named King Street, is actually the oldest street in Blaenavon. The lane was in existence by the 16th century and became one of the first places where people built houses independently of the ironmasters. This is another area of the town where clearance of workers' housing has changed the street scene dramatically since the 1960s. As you get to the end of the terraced row on the right-hand side of the street, continue through the alley called Bethel Lane, past the Bethel Baptist Church, which opened in 1887, and down onto High Street. It was during a meeting of the local board on the 26th of May 1864 that it was decided the road leading from the gateway or church pillars of St. Peter's through what was the wine field should be named High Street, and that the street leading from the top of High Street to Blaenavon's Old Pound be called Wine Street. The terraced housing that lines either side of High Street was built between 1863 and 1870. The narrow two-up, two-down houses are typical of those found throughout South Wales's industrial towns. The two terraces that run parallel across the slope at the top of the hill, Upper and Lower Wine Street, were among the few in the town centre built by the Blaenavon Iron Company, when 50 houses were laid out in the wine field between 1864 and 66. You've now reached the end of this track. Please pause your player and continue down High Street, turning left by the Public Library onto Lion Street. Once on Lion Street, press play. Track 4. Lion Street. On the corner of Lion Street and High Street stands the former municipal offices, dating largely from the 1930s. These now house the Blaenavon Library and a community heritage museum. Within the museum, an array of exhibits and stands will guide you through the fascinating history of Blaenavon. The museum also contains an exhibition on the author Alexander Cordell. Cordell particularly loved this part of Wales, where he lived for many years and wrote his best-selling novel, Rape of the Fair Country. Through detailed research and his evocative writing, he immortalised the people who lived and worked during the Industrial Revolution. Continue along Lion Street and past the car park in Lion Square, an area that was once used for public meetings. It's easy to see from here how Broad Street sits within a gully in the hillside, at a lower level than the surrounding streets. The Lion Hotel, which stands on the corner of Lion Street and Broad Street, was at the centre of the town's only serious riot. It became the focus for rioters unhappy with the results of the general election of 1868, when Colonel Henry Clifford, the Liberal candidate and hero of the workers, lost out to the Conservative candidates Octavius Morgan and Paulette Somerset. Groups of rioters targeted properties of Tory supporters, but the main body of protesters laid siege to the Lion Hotel, regarded as the headquarters of the Conservative Party within the town. They smashed all the windows and broke down the doors. A newspaper of the time recorded how beer, wines and spirits were carried into the street, casks were broached and the gutters ran with liquor. Many went down on their hands and knees to drink, and sucked away like beasts until they reeled and fell senseless. The ruffians inside the hotel, infuriated and maddened by the spirits they had drunk, broke down every shelf, doorway and stair rail, and attempted to set fire to the building. The vandalism and looting was only brought under control with the arrival of troops dispatched from their barracks at Newport. You've now reached the end of this track. Please pause your player and continue along Lion Street onto Broad Street. Once there, press play. Track 5. Broad Street. Broad Street is the long shopping street that developed from the 1840s to form the heart of the town. It curves up a shallow cleft in the hillside, following the line of a stream, which now flows through a culvert buried under the road. The street was originally called Hiolanant, or Stream Street, for this reason. By the 1860s the street was filled with shops, mostly gas-lit and open into the evenings, selling meat, groceries, clothes, boots, jewellery, glasswares, and a vast range of other goods. The hard-working men of Blaenavon evidently enjoyed their beer. In 1863, Blaenavon had 41 pubs or beer houses, many of which stood on Broad Street. Most, such as the Alma, Boot, Forge Hammer, Crown, Swan and White Hart, have now disappeared, leaving just 4 establishments: the Castle, Market Tavern, Rolling Mill and Lion. Continue downhill to find the Bethlehem Independent Chapel, set back from the road in Bethlehem Square, with its graveyard around it. Bethlehem Chapel was placed beside the stream in 1840, before Broad Street itself was actually constructed. Almost opposite is the huge English Baptist Chapel, which originally opened in 1847 and was rebuilt in 1888 to serve the increasing numbers of English-speaking workers coming to the area. You've now reached the end of this track. Please pause your player and continue downhill along Ivor Street. Then turn right to walk uphill along Church Road and stop on the corner of High Street beside Horeb Chapel. Once there, press play. Track 6. Horeb Chapel, St. Peter's Church and the Workmen's Institute. Horeb Baptist Chapel, which stands opposite St. Peter's Churchyard on the corner of High Street and Church Road, was established on a different site in 1807 and relocated to its current position in 1862. On the opposite side of High Street stands the imposing Workmen's Institute. In 1882 the workmen of Blaenavon set up a committee to establish an institute as a focus for community life and self-education. Members of the committee donated a halfpenny a week from their wages and worked as volunteer labourers until, in 1895, 13 years later, and at a cost of £10,000, the institute was opened. Confusingly, the year 1894 is displayed on the side of the building, but it wasn't formally opened until 7th of January 1895. Inside the institute were meeting rooms, club rooms, a library and an auditorium to seat 1,500 people. Now owned by the local authority and managed by a team of dedicated volunteers, the institute continues to provide a focus for the local community. The clock tower, which stands next to the institute, dates from 1931 and was erected to the memory of 118 citizens of the town who lost their lives during the First World War. Further names have been added to the monument to commemorate the 60 men and women killed during the Second World War and other townspeople lost since. On the opposite side of the road stands St. Peter's Church. The church was built by the ironmasters Thomas Hill and Samuel Hopkins for their growing community in 1804 and consecrated in 1805. It was a simple example of the Gothic revival style before it became the norm for Anglican churches. St. Peter's has also been known as the Iron Church, with good reason. Iron is to be seen everywhere, both inside and out. The window frames are iron, and when a gallery was inserted to accommodate the expanding congregation, it was supported by elegant iron columns. The church can even boast a unique cast-iron font. In the churchyard are several tombs with cast-iron tops, including those for the ironmaster Thomas Hill and Thomas Deakin, the ironworks engineer. The churchyard gateposts were cast from the same patterns as the columns of the balance tower at the ironworks. Among the monuments inside are memorials for Samuel Elmer Steele, the company surgeon, and the ironmasters Thomas Hill II, Samuel Hopkins and Howard Kennard. You have now reached the end of the Blaenavon Town audio tour. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the town. From this point you can now return to the start point of the tour, the World Heritage Centre, located in St Peter's School.